I am a crown. Once I rested upon the heads of kings and queens, glittering with jewels, blinding with power. But power always breeds betrayal, and I have witnessed it all. I was born not of flesh but of fire. Gold, molten and glowing, poured into molds shaped by hands that trembled with reverence. Jewels, each stolen from faraway lands, were pressed into my body, their brilliance reflecting ambition more than beauty, the blacksmith whispered as he worked. Though not to me, to the lords who commissioned me. He knew that I would not belong to him, that I was destined for heads far above his station. Yet every hammer strike carried his pride. Every cut of the chisel etched his soul into my frame. When at last I cooled, I gleamed not as mere metal, but as a promise, a symbol of dominion, of divinity, of the lie that mortals could rule as gods. My first day beneath the sun was not in silence but in triumph. Trumpets cried, banners waved, and I was lifted high for all to see. The crowd gasped as jewels caught the light, each reflection striking their eyes like lightning. Then came the king, young, strong, arrogant. He placed me upon his head, and for a moment I believed myself divine. His subjects bowed, their faces pressed to the earth, as though worshipping not him, but me. Yet even then, I felt the weight of falsehood. For beneath every cheer lingered envy, and within every oath of loyalty, betrayal already whispered. In the months that followed, I sat high upon his brow during feasts, trials, and decrees. I heard the cheers of loyalists and the murmurs of traitors. I watched the wine spill like rivers, the gold exchanged like stolen promises, and the daggers glint beneath sleeves. The king smiled, blind to the whispers. But I was not blind. Upon me lay the gaze of every jealous noble, every scheming hand. They did not worship me, they coveted me. And so I learned, a crown is not a gift. A crown is a curse. I was the jewel of a kingdom, the symbol of a throne. But jewels do not shine without shadows, and already, betrayal had found its way into the halls. I sat high upon the king's head as he walked through the marble halls of his palace. The chandeliers glittered above. The courtiers bowed, their smiles painted in gold. But beneath those smiles were daggers. I could feel them. They did not look at him. They looked at me. Every jewel in my body was a promise of power, every reflection in my gold a temptation. They whispered in corners, their words soft as silk, sharp as knives. The king, proud and young, laughed at their flattery. But I knew what they truly longed for. They did not seek to serve him. They dreamed of wearing me. In the feasts that followed, I heard their oaths of loyalty, voices honeyed, dripping with lies. Cups of wine clinked and laughter filled the air, but in their eyes I saw hunger. They toasted to his reign, but their hands tightened on the hilts of hidden blades. They praised his glory, but their hearts beat with betrayal. And still I sat upon his head, shimmering, dazzling, blinding him to the shadows at his very table. One man stood closer than all the others, his most trusted advisor. I felt his hands adjust me upon the king's head, gentle as a brother, careful as a servant. But when the king turned away, I caught the truth. The advisor's smile curved, not with loyalty but with ambition. His eyes lingered on me too long, his touch pressed too firm. He did not serve the king, he served the crown, and that crown was me. In courts draped in silk and gold, I learned a truth sharper than any blade. Betrayal is not shouted in battlefields, it is whispered in banquet halls. The night of betrayal came dressed as celebration. Torches blazed, goblets overflowed, music rose high into the vaulted ceilings. The king laughed louder than ever, blinded by joy, while I sat upon his head, heavy with dread. For I had seen the glances exchanged in secret. I had felt the trembling of greedy hands, and as the wine darkened, so did their intentions. When the first blade flashed, it was not in battle, but in banquet. A cry rang out, muffled by the roar of laughter, and in that moment the crown upon the king's head became a beacon and a target. He rose, startled, confusion clouding his young face. His hand went to his sword, but the room was no battlefield. The very men he called brothers now lunged at him with steel and poison. I felt the tremor of his rage, the thundering of his heart as he swung his blade against the tide. But for every strike, another shadow rose. For every oath once sworn, another betrayal answered. The king fought not for his crown, he fought for his life. And I, sitting above his brow, burned with the weight of helplessness. At last the king stumbled. Blood stained the marble beneath his boots. His blade clattered, his breath faltered, and with a final strike, he fell, the hall echoing not with cheers but with silence. I slipped from his head, my golden rim striking the stone floor. In that moment I was no longer a crown of glory. I was a prize, a curse, a silent witness to the death of a king. Hands reached for me, greedy, trembling, desperate. And I knew, though my master had perished, my story had only begun. I once shone as a symbol of triumph, but now I lay among blood and silence, no longer a crown of kings, but a relic of betrayal. I did not lie on the marble for long. Hands rushed from every corner, some trembling with fear, others steady with hunger. The advisor, no longer a shadow but a rising sun, lifted me with a careful grace, as if gentleness could hide ambition. He wrapped me in velvet to quiet the room's gasp, then spoke of order, of continuity, of peace. But I heard the bargain under his breath. Power had changed heads, not hearts. He gathered the nobles by torchlight and placed me upon his own brow, only for a heartbeat, a test fit, a private coronation no priest would witness. He smiled at his reflection in a polished platter, and the hall learned a new posture, kneeling to the man who wore the symbol rather than to the symbol itself. Years followed like a pageant of polished lies, edicts sealed with wax, treaties sworn with thin smiles, punishments delivered behind embroidered curtains. I felt the weight of famine, of new taxes hammered into the poor, of coins shaved thin, to feed a court that called itself eternal. Each council was a theater where loyalty played the hero and greed wrote the script. The people watched from the palace gates and began to speak of me not as glory, but as a curse. Mothers touched their children's hair and whispered, "May you never wear a crown." Even the advisor, now king by every name but virtue, grew wary of my light. He darkened the jewels with soot before parades, fearful that brilliance might remind the crowd of promises he had broken. The end did not arrive with a trumpet. It came on soft feet, rumors first, then shutters closing, then a silence so large the city could hear its own heartbeat. One night the gates opened inward. The crowd did not storm. It surrounded. Torches lowered, voices raised. The palace became a ship taking on water. He tried to flee with me in a travel chest lined with furs. In the chaos, a servant loyal to no one but survival lifted me out and hid me beneath her cloak. I traveled in the dark through alleys, then across borders, then across years. I rested in a merchant's trunk, glittered at a warlord's banquet, slept in a monastery vault where monks argued whether to melt me into chalices or keep me as a warning. No one listened to the warning. They only listened to the glitter. Centuries later, I surfaced in a hall brighter than any throne room, an auction lit by electric suns. Gloves held me, numbers rose, a gavel fell, and I was purchased not for rule but for story. A curator placed me behind glass, typed a plaque that spoke of dynasties, reforms, revolts. The words were tidy, the years were not. Now I rest where children press their faces to the case and ask, "Was it heavy?" I wish I could answer. Weight is not measured in gold. It is measured in silence, in secrets, in the distance between a promise and its breaking. I am a crown. I remember the hands that used me, the hands that lost me, and the hands that pretend I am harmless. I am not harmless. I am history made visible, and I am watching still. They say monarchies are relics, faded into textbooks and television dramas. Yet I have seen the tilt of heads in glass towers, the way men and women in tailored suits glance at their reflections with the same hunger as kings of old. Power has not changed its shape, only its costume. I rest behind museum glass, yet the whispers of ambition still brush against me. Visitors pass by with phones in their hands, capturing me not as warning but as ornament, a backdrop for their own fleeting. crowns of pixels and likes. I wonder if they know the bargain they echo with every flash. Crowns are not always hammered from gold. They are written into contracts, woven into flags, hidden inside bank accounts offshore. I have learned this as the centuries turned. Symbols change, but hunger does not. The servant who carried me, beneath her cloak, would not recognize today's palaces, yet she would know the scent of ambition. The general who bent before me would not understand stock exchanges, yet he would see the same battlefield in boardrooms. The tyrant who smeared soot upon my jewels would find soot enough in lobbyists' promises. The faces alter, the script does not. Children still press their faces to the glass and ask if I was heavy. I wish I could tell them, yes, and it will always be heavy. But not because of the metal, not because of the jewels. Because every crown carries the silence of the hungry, the grief of the forgotten, and the weight of choices that carve centuries. What matters is not whether crowns exist, but whether we have learned to resist their spell. And as I listen to the rhythm of your world, sirens, speeches, screens, I'm not sure the lesson has been learned at all. I am the crown. I have outlived kings and parliaments, generals and bankers. I have been hidden, stolen, worshipped, despised. And through every hand that lifted me, I have whispered the same question. Will you wear me, or will you serve instead? Tsiu, answer has never been certain. Perhaps that is why I endure, not as relic, not as ornament, but as warning. And if you think I am silent behind this glass, you are wrong. I am speaking even now. I am watching you, and I remember. I was forged not of gold alone, but of ambition, sacrifice, and blood. Once I crowned kings and queens, dazzling courts with splendor. Now I lie in silence, forgotten by those who once trembled at my sight. Yet my voice lingers, etched into the stones of palaces, whispered in the dreams of those who covet power still. For crowns never truly die. They wait. They wait for the next hand bold enough or foolish enough to wear them.